Welcome back again. Yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander of Keeping It Honest. And while we're getting people a chance to come on live and also to catch it up on replay, name again is Anthony Parker Alexander of Keeping It Honest. What we try to do in this program, we try to give both sides of the story. We try to give the left side, we try to give the right side, we try to give the middle side. And at the end, you may not like everything that we put out there, but you will have to agree. It pretty much is the truth. We give a little bit of opinion, but we're really more facts. We kind of think of the show as a cliff notes. You get information from us, and then you go out and pursue more of it to see if it's true. Background for yours truly, been doing mainstream for years, radio, TV, print. And then the more that I backed off of mainstream, the more I found out, well, some of the mainstream media is tilted one way or another. You don't get all facts. You might have to go to one station and then go to another station. But when you do go to those, and even the internet, don't believe everything that you see or hear or read. Use it as cliff notes and then go back and see if it's the truth. So on this show, we try to keep it simple, keep it honest, keep it real. And that's what we do. If you have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly. It's parkerman2011 at gmail.com, parkerman2011 at gmail.com. You can also text me. Telephone number is 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. So we have a lot to do in this show. You watched a couple of our shows. You know we're kind of in depth in what we do. Excuse me. So some of the stuff we're talking, because it has been just a very interesting news cycle. Some news you may know about, some news you may not. Jesse Jackson. He retired, stepped down from the Push organization that he's run for many decades. He has a successor. We're going to talk about that. Does it really matter with him? Do we really care? Young people, you may not know about him, but he ran for president, African-American man. Ran for president twice, didn't win, and also got some hostages released from other parts of the world. People say, okay, Jesse Jackson, did he start to know justice, know peace? And it's interesting to show because we're talking about two iconic African-American figures. We're also going to do Jesse Jackson's speech when he ran for the second time for president of the United States. We're going to find out if that same speech, which was in 86, 87, if you take out Democrats, Republicans, and you listen to what is said in that speech, if it still applies today. Speaking of people running for president, I was watching Donald Trump, and I guess he's been doing this speech for the past couple of years. He tells this poem, and it's called the Snake Poem. Some people say he's talking about immigration, but it's a very popular poem, which I never heard about, so I'm curious if you've heard about it too. Speaking of hearing about Callie, the missing girl, the girl that was abducted, the girl that saw the baby on the highway, we're going to put our little spin on that too, and we're going to also show you, she wasn't the first one, and it's not just an African-American thing. It's anybody who has an abduction story. What does it take for us to believe that they're really abducted? We're going to talk about that. One of my favorite rappers, Tupac. Man, he's been dead since 96, I think. So that's about 30 years, 27 years he's been dead. Recently, they found out some information on who his killer might be, but some people said, duh. We already knew that, so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to close it with how Miranda got her, not her groove, but got her rights. This will affect everybody. So definitely stay tuned for that. Speaking of affecting, you can affect me by hitting the like button and the share and subscribe. We thank you for, telling people out there about our show. And we need to continue to grow. So help us grow to get the word out of the stuff that we do. We're not mainstream media. We're just streamed media. And again, we're starting this out with you guys in mind. You have any stories that you say, hey, you know what? We don't hear that. So what I do when I'm watching shows streaming, when I hear somebody say on that show, well, you never hear it here because the mainstream media never does it. That's a story that I want to do. That's a story I want to follow up on. Excuse me. We also did, as we go back a little bit, we did a story about the 27 missing kids that were in Cleveland, Ohio. We're waiting on follow up on that. We also tried to contact John Amos, and his story was that he is broke. His daughter put up a GoFundMe account, got tens of thousands of dollars, and the father said, well, you know, I'm okay. I was just in the hospital for a while. We're going to talk about a bunch of stories that you may think, man, I never really thought about that. But even if it's a common story, we're putting a Parker twist on it. So again, you're watching Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker. So this story I want to talk about real quick. This guy right here, Reverend Franklin. Okay, so he took over recently Jesse Jackson's position, where Jesse was the president and leader of the Rainbow Push Coalition. So this Reverend Frederick Douglass Haynes, he's the president now, and the official transfer of leadership, it was attended by Vice President Kamala Harris, and this was at the organization's 57th annual conference. So Haynes, 62, let me give a little background on this guy. He served as a senior pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas since 1983, growing the membership from 100 members to over 13,000. That's a lot. Under his leadership, the church founded the Thrive Intern and Leadership Program, which employs young Black people with local businesses and the church, an effort that earned praise from then President Barack Obama in a 2014 speech. He's honored to take on Jackson's legacy, he said. As a student of Reverend Jackson's, I am honored to be selected for this prestigious and important position. The role Rainbow Push Coalition plays today is just as critical as it was in 1963 when the organization was founded. Our communities need organizations like Rainbow Push to not only continue to fight for justice and equality, but to shepherd the next generation of advocates into the movement. So this organization has been around since 1950. Since 1963. Wow, so how many people have heard of the organization? I'm curious. So Jesse Jackson, he's 81. He was a founder and longtime leader of the Civil Rights Organization. And so what made him give up? He said, we had a board meeting. I've been doing this stuff for over 64 years. I was 18 when I started it. So President Joe Biden praised Jackson in a statement. And, you know, that's what everybody's going to do because he's been there so long. So let's talk about Jesse Jackson a little bit. He was a protege of Dr. King. In 1966, he was chosen to head the Chicago branch of Operation Breadbasket, and a year later, he was appointed the national director. In 1971, he formed Operation People United to Save Humanity, PUSH. Some people have known what PUSH is, but not that many people know what it means. So again, it's the Operation People United to Save Humanity. This was started in Chicago as another way to improve the economic conditions of Black communities. How successful has it been? Well, you can check that out too. Go on the internet. Like I said, I'm only giving you clip notes and find out about that. So he also founded the National Rainbow Coalition in 1988 with the goal of obtaining equal rights for all Americans. And I remember when I was a kid, Jesse Jackson was the big thing, had this afro and everything, and he was out there fighting for everybody. Some people look at him now as he's a dying breed, and what's his power? Well, you know what? He had been doing it for 50 years, pretty much. So the organization merged in 1996. The coalition has provided more than $6.1 million in student scholarships and helped more than 4,000 families avoid foreclosure throughout its history. So in 1996, and that's 27 years. So in 27 years, they provided more than $6.1 million. The question is that enough? Is that good? I don't think that's bad. So Jackson he ran for president twice. Unsuccessful, but he ran in 1984 and 1988. And he hosted, now here's a guy that was a talk show host too, the CNN show Both Sides with Jesse Jackson from 92 to 2000. So the civil rights leader, he has had a series of health issues in recent years. And in 2017, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he was hospitalized several times in 2021. So he's 81 years old. He decided, hey, it's time to give it to the next generation, which that next generation is in their 50s or 60s. And then hopefully they will teach the generation after that or before that, which is in their 40s. And then hopefully the people in their 40s will teach that generation after them, which is in their 20s. And then we can keep hope alive, because that's what it's about. So that's Jesse Jackson and the new person involved, who's Reverend Frederick Haynes III. And let's pray that he keeps hope alive too. So in 1988, again, Jesse Jackson ran for a second unsuccessful run, but he did win. He won because he did get in that barrel where he was able to run. And what I hate is when people say, hey, you know what? I'm going to tell you too right now. I ran for Congress. Did not win. And talking to somebody, a politician who's in office, and they asked me about, are you going to be running for office again? And I said, well, you know what? I did run for Congress. And you know what they told me? Well, you didn't win. So I said to them, did you run for Congress? Very astute position, even running. You have to give credit for people getting out there and their platform and their issues. And sometime I'm going to talk about my platform and my issues and what I ran on. But we're going to go and you're going to hear Jesse Jackson's speech, because I'm going to do it. And this is a speech that he gave when he was nominated again. This is at the National Democratic Convention back in 1988. And it was called Keep Hope Alive. So take a break. I want you guys to give you something to drink. You got to do it real quick though, or something to eat. We've got a great show ahead of us. I sound like one of those, mainstream media hosts. But I'm telling you, we got a good show, good topics and everything, and things that will make you think. Because we keep it simple, we keep it honest, and we keep it real. And when we come back, we're going to recreate as best as we can. You can close your eyes and listen to it when we come back. But we're going to do Reverend Jesse Jackson's 1988 nominated speech for President of the United States. And we'll be right back after this. And welcome back. So this is Jesse Jackson's speech that he gave in 1988. Tonight we pause and give praise and honor to God for being good enough to allow us to be at this place at this time. When I look out at this convention, I see the face of America, red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We are all precious in God's sight. The real Rainbow Coalition. All of us who are here think that we are seated, but we're really standing on someone's shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement. So Miss Parks comes to the podium, people clap. And then Jesse Jackson goes on. My right and my privilege to stand here before you has been won won in my lifetime by the blood and the sweat of the innocent. Many were lost in the struggle for the right to vote. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young student, gave his life. Viola Lizzo, a white mother from Detroit, called the N word, the N lover, and brains blown out at point blank range. Michael, Andrew, and James, two Jews and a black, found in a common grave, bodies riddled with bullets in Mississippi. Let's not forget the four darling little girls in a church in Birmingham, Alabama. They died that we might have the right to live. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who lies only a few miles down us, tonight he must feel good as he looks down upon us. We sit here together, a rainbow, a coalition, the sons and daughters of slave masters and the sons of daughters of slaves, sitting together around a common ground, a common table, to decide the direction of our party and our country. His heart will be full tonight. As a testament to the struggles of those who have come before us, as a legacy for those who will come after, as a tribute to the endurance, the patience, the courage of prayers, the courage of far fathers and mothers, as an assurance that their prayers are being answered, that their work has not been in vain, and that hope is eternal. Tonight, tomorrow, my name will go into nomination for the presidency of the United States. We meet here tonight at a crossroads, a point of decision. Shall we expand, be inclusive, find unity and power, or suffer division and impotence? Common ground. Let's think of Jerusalem, the intersection where many trails met, a small village that became the birthplace for three great religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Why was this village so blessed, you ask? Because it provided a crossroads where different people met, different cultures, different civilizations could meet. And what did they do? They found common ground. When people come together, think about this. Flowers always flourish. The air is rich with the aroma of a new spring. Common ground. That's the challenge for our party tonight. Left wing, right wing. It takes two wings to fly. Think about this, 2 wings to fly. Whether you're a hawk or a dove, you're just a bird living in the same environment, in the same world. The Bible teaches us that when lions and lambs lay down together, none will be afraid, and there will be peace in the valley. I know it sounds impossible. Lions eat lambs. Lambs sensibly flee from lions. Yet even lions and lambs find common ground. Why? Because neither lions nor lambs want the forest to catch on fire. Neither lions nor lambs can service and survive nuclear war. If lions and lambs can find common ground, surely we can as well, as civilized people. As Jesus said, "Not my will, but thine be done." It was his way of saying there's a higher good beyond personal comfort or position. The good of our nation is at stake. Its commitment to working men and women, to the poor and the vulnerable, to the many in the world. With so many guided missiles and so much misguided leadership, the stakes are exceedingly high. What's our choice? Full participation in a democratic government or more abandonment and neglect? Those are our two choices. And so this night, we choose not a false sense of independence, not our capacity to survive and endure. Tonight, we choose interdependency and our capacity to act and unite for the greater good. Easier said than done, right? Where do you find common ground? At the point of challenge. This campaign has shown that politics need not be marked by top politicians, packaged by posters and pundits. Politics can be a moral area where people come together to find common ground. And not just a moral area, but a moral arena. We find common ground at the plant gate that closes on workers without notice. We find common ground at the farm auction, where a good farmer loses his or her land to bad loans or diminishing markets. Common ground at the high school and any schoolyard where teachers cannot get adequate pay and students cannot even get a scholarship and can't even get a loan. Common ground at the hospital admitting room where somebody tonight is dying because they cannot afford to go upstairs to get a bed that's empty, waiting for someone with insurance to get sick. We are a better nation than that. We must do better. Common ground. What is leadership if not present help in a time of crisis? And so I met you at the point of challenge. In Jay, Maine, where paper workers were striking for fair wages. In Greenville, Iowa, where family farmers struggle for a fair price. In Cleveland, Ohio, where working women seek comparable worth. In McFarland, California, where the children of Hispanic farm workers may be dying from poisoned land, dying in clusters with cancer. In an AIDS hospice in Houston, Texas, where the sick support one another, too often rejected by their family and friends. Common ground. America is not a blanket woven from one thread, one color, one cloth. When I was a child growing up in Greensville, South Carolina, and Grandmama could not afford a blanket, she didn't complain and we did not freeze. Instead, she took pieces of an old cloth, patches, wool, silk, crocker sack, only patches barely good enough to wipe your shoes with. But they didn't stay that way very long. So with sturdy hands and a strong cord, she sewed them all together and made them a quilt. It became a thing of beauty and power and culture. Now, we must build such a quilt. Farmers, you seek fair prices, and you're right, but you cannot stand alone. Your patch is not big enough. Workers, you fight for fair wages. You're also right, but your patch labor is not big enough. Women, you seek comparable worth and pay equality. You are right, but your patch is not big enough. Women, mothers who seek Head Start, daycare, and also prenatal care on the front side of life, relevant jail care, and welfare on the back side of life, you're also right, but your patch is not big enough. Students, you seek scholarships. You're really right, but your patch is not big enough. Blacks and Hispanics, when we fight for civil rights, we are right, but our patch is not good enough. Gays and lesbians, when you fight against discrimination, you are right, but your patch is not good enough. Conservatives and progressives, when you fight for what you believe, right wing, left wing, hawk, dove, you are right from your point of view, but your point of view and your patch is not good enough. Through all this, don't despair. Be as wise as my grandmama. Pull the patches and the pieces together, bound by a common thread. When we form that great quilt of unity and common ground, we'll have the power to bring and correct healthcare and housing and jobs and education and hope to our nation. We, the people, can win. We believe in a government that's a tool of our democracy in service to the public, not an instrument of the way in search of private health. We believe in government with the consent of the governed, of, for, and by the people. We must now emerge into a new day with a new direction. Leadership must meet the moral challenges of its day. What's the moral challenge of the day, you ask? We have public accommodations. We have the right to vote. We have open housing. What's the fundamental challenge of our day then? It is to end economic violence, plant closings without notice, economic violence, Even the greedy do not profit long from greed, economic violence. Most poor people are not lazy. They are not black. They are not brown. They are mostly white, female, and young. But whether white, black, or brown, a hungry baby's belly turned inside out is the same color. Color it pain, color it hurt, color it agony. Most poor people are not on welfare. Some of them are literate and they can't read the one ad sections. And when they can, they can't find a job that matches the address. They still work hard every day. I know. I live amongst them. I'm one of them. I know the work. I'm a witness. They catch the early bus. They work every day. They raise other people's children. You think about that. Raising other people's children. And they still work every day. They clean the streets. They work every day. They drive cabs. They work every day. They change the beds that you slept in these hotels last night, and you can't get a union contract for them. They work every day. No, they're not lazy. Someone must defend them because it's right, and they cannot speak for themselves. They work in hospitals. I know they do. They wipe the bodies of those who are sick with fever and pain. They empty their bedpans. They clean out their commodes. No job is beneath them. And yet when they get sick, they cannot even lie in the same bed that they made up every day. America, that is not right. We are a better nation than that. We are a better nation than that. We need a real war on drugs. You can't just say no. It's deeper than that. You can't just get a palm reader or an astrologer. It's more profound than that. I met the children in Watts who, unfortunately, in their despair, their grapes of hope have become raisins of despair. And they're turning on each other and they're self-destructing. But I stayed with them all night. I wanted to hear their case. They said to me, Jesse Jackson, as you challenge us to say no to drugs, you're right. And to not sell them, you're right. And not to use these guns, you're right. We have neither jobs, nor houses, nor services, nor training. We have no way out. Some of us take drugs as anesthesia for our pain. Some take drugs as a way of pleasure, good short-term pleasure, and long-term pain. Some sell drugs to make money. It's wrong. We know this. We shouldn't be doing it. But you need to know that we know. We can go and buy the drugs by the boxes at the port. If we can buy the boxes at the port to get the drugs, don't you believe the federal government can stop if they really wanted to? You cannot fight a war on drugs unless and until you're going to challenge the bankers and the gun sellers and those who grow them. But just don't focus on the children. Let's stop drugs at the level of supply and demand. We must end the scourge on the American culture. Leadership. Leadership. What a difference will we make? Leadership. It cannot just go along, and it cannot just go along to get along. We must do more than change presidents. We must change direction. Leadership must face the moral challenges of our day. The nuclear war buildup is irrational. Strong leadership cannot desire to look tough and let that stand in the way in the pursuit of peace. Leadership must reverse the arms race. At least we should pledge no for the first use. Now, why is that? Because first use begets first retaliation. And that's mutual, and the result, annihilation. That's not a rational way out. No use at all. Let's think it out and not fight it out because it's an unwinnable fight. Why hold a card that you can never drop? Let's give peace a chance. So most people in the world today, you think about this, are yellow or brown, black, non-Christian, poor, female, young, and they don't speak English in the real world. I'm often asked, Jesse, why do you take on these tough issues? They're not very political. We can't win that way. If an issue, think about this, is morally right, it will eventually be political. It may be political and never be right. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have the most votes in Atlantic City, but her principles have outlasted every delegate who voted to lock her in. Rosa Parks, we all know her. She did not have the most votes, but she was morally right. Dr. King didn't have the most votes about the Vietnam War, but he was morally right. And if we are principled first, our politics will fall in place. Jesse, why do you take these big, bold initiatives? A poem by an unknown author went something like this. We mastered the air. We conquered the sea, alienated distance, and prolonged life. But we're not wise enough to live on this earth without war and without hate. As for Jesse Jackson, I'm tired of selling my little boat far inside the harbor. I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. And should my frail craft prove too slight for waves that sweep those billows over, I'd rather go down in a stirring fight than drown to death at the sheltered shore. We've got to go out, my friends, where the big boats are. And then for our children, young America, hold your head up high now. We can win. We must not lose you to drugs and violence, premature pregnancy, suicide, cynicism, pessimism, and despair. We can win. Wherever you are tonight, I challenge you to hope and not despair. Don't submerge your dreams. Exercise above all else, even on drugs. Dream the day you are drug free. Even in the gutter, dream the day that you will be out and up on your feet again. You must not ever stop dreaming. Face reality, yes, but don't stop with the way things are. Dream of things as they ought to be. Dream. Face pain, but love, hope, faith, and dream will help you rise above the pain. Use hope and imagination as weapons of survival and progress. But you keep on dreaming, young America. Dream of peace. Peace is rational and reasonable. War is irrational in this age and unwinnable. Dream of teachers who teach for life and not for a living. Dream of doctors who are concerned more about public health than public wealth. Dream of lawyers more concerned about justice than a judgeship. Dream of preachers who are concerned more about prophecy than profiteering. Dream on a high road with sound values. And then America, as we go forth in September, October, November, and then beyond, America must never surrender to a high moral challenge. Do not surrender to drugs. The best drug policy is a no first use. Don't surrender with needles and cynicism. Let's have no first use on the one hand or clinics on the other. Never surrender, young America. Go forward. America must never surrender to malnutrition. We can feed the hungry and clothe the naked. We must never surrender. We must go forward. We must never surrender to illiteracy. Invest in our children. Never surrender and go forward. We must never surrender to inequality. Women cannot compromise ERA or compatible worth. Women are making 60 cents on the dollar to what a man makes. Women cannot buy meat cheaper. Women cannot buy bread cheaper. Women cannot buy milk cheaper. Women deserve to get paid for the work that you do. It's right and it's fair. Don't surrender, my friends. Those who have AIDS tonight, you deserve our compassion. Even with AIDS, you must not surrender. Why I cannot challenge you this way? Jesse Jackson, you don't understand my situation. You be on television. You don't understand. I see you with the big people. You don't understand my situation. I understand. You see me on TV, but you don't know the me that makes me me. They wonder, why does Jesse run? Because they see me running for the White House. They don't see the house that I'm running from. I have a story. I wasn't always on television. Writers were not always outside my home. When I was born one late afternoon, October 8th, in Greenville, South Carolina, no writers asked my mom my name. Nobody chose to write down our address. My mom was not supposed to make it, and I was not supposed to make it. You see, I was born of a teenage mother who was born of a teenage mother. I understand. I know abandonment and people being mean to you and saying you're nothing and that nothing can be made good of you. I understand. Jesse Jackson is my third name. I'm adopted. When I had no name, my grandmother gave me her name. My name was Jesse Burns till I was 12 years old. So I wouldn't have a blank space. She gave me a name to hold on to and to hold over. I understand when nobody knows your name. I understand when you have no name. I understand. I wasn't born in a hospital. Mama didn't have insurance. I was born in the bed at the house. I really do understand. Born in a 3-room house, bathroom in the backyard, slop out of bed, no hot and cold water running. I understand. Wallpaper used for decoration? No, they were used for a windbreaker. I understand. I'm a working person's person. That's why I understand. Understand you whether you're black or white. Understand work. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a shovel programmed in my hand. So every one of our funny stories they put on you, those of you who are watching this broadcast tonight in the projects, on the corners, I understand. Call you outcast, low down, you can't make it, you're nothing, you're from nobody, subclass, underclass. When you see Jesse Jackson, when my name goes into nomination, your name goes into nomination. I was born in a slum, but the slum was not born in me, and it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. So wherever you are at tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high, stick your chest out, you can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you understand? Suffering breeds character, character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but you just know that you qualify. And you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond, keep hope alive. I love you very much. I love you very much. And thank you. So that was a speech, 1988. Jesse Jackson's nominating speech to run for president of the United States. How many of those things have changed since 1988? That is 36 years ago that he gave that speech. You think about some of the words that I said, even if you close your eyes and listen to that speech, how many of those words can be used today in this day and age? Wow. The legacy of Jesse Jackson Jr. And we'll be right back after this. And welcome back. Yours truly, Anthony Parker of, keeping it honest. Yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. And we just gave a speech, kind of tried to reenact it, but just wanted you to listen to the words of Jesse Jackson's Keep Hope Alive speech when he was nominated for president of the United States back in 1988. Wow. Long time ago. How many of those words still mean something now? So real quick, as we finish this up, some facts about Jesse Jackson. He was born October 8th, 1941, Greenville, South Carolina. His birth name was Jesse Louis Burns. Jesse Louis Burns. So his children married a couple of times. He has Ashley, Jacqueline, Yusuf, Jonathan, Jesse Jr., and Sunita. In his education, he went to North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University. Of course, he's a Baptist. So he ran for president twice, but he has never held elective office. Interesting tidbit about him. After high school, Jackson received an offer from the Chicago White Sox, and he got a football scholarship from the University of Iowa. He chose the football scholarship, but later transferred to North Carolina A&T State University. His son, Jesse Jackson Jr., is a former U.S. congressman who represented Illinois' 3rd District. So in 1960, Jackson begins his civil rights activism when he had, entered the whites-only public library in Greenville County. And he did this with 7 other friends. So back then in the 60s, we know there were places you just couldn't go. So they were arrested and jailed, and a lawyer filed suit on their behalf. And 2 months later, the library system abandons formal segregation of its downtown library. So we just don't know how times have changed. Years ago, you couldn't even go into a library where you had your black only or white only section. And in 1960, that's when he really started being a civil rights activist. In 65, he participates in civil rights demonstrations in Selma with Dr. King. And that's kind of when he met Dr. King. In 66, Dr. King chose him to head the Chicago branch of Operations Breadbasket. And this was an organization that strived to improve the economic conditions of Black communities across the nation. A year later, he was appointed national director. Young man working hard. In 68, he's ordained a Baptist minister. In 71, he resigns from the SCLC and he formed Operation PUSH, People United to Save Humanity in Chicago. From 71 to 86, he was executive director of Operation for PUSH. In 1983, November 3rd, he formally announces his bid to run for president. Now, he wasn't just a civil rights activist. He saved a lot of people too. In 1984, he secures the release of 48 Cuban and Cuban American prisoners held in Cuba. Wow. Hey, look at that. In 86, he founds the National Rainbow Coalition. In October 87, he announces his candidacy to run for president again. From 92 to 2000, he hosts Both Sides with Jesse Jackson on CNN. So for those years, he was a talk show host besides being a civil rights activist, kind of like Al Sharpton is today. In September 96, Operation PUSH and the Rainbow Coalition, they merged to form the Rainbow PUSH Coalition. In 99, he successfully negotiates with the release of 3 U.S. soldiers who had been held in Yugoslavia for more than a month. So that's his world civil rights activities. And he was doing this on his own without having the backing of the United States. In August 2000, he received the Presidential Medal of Honor from President Bill Clinton. In January of 2001, and this is a sad thing, he acknowledges that he fathered a daughter out of wedlock in 1999 with Karen Stanford. She was a former head of Rainbow PUSH Coalition's Washington Bureau. And there's a thing that when people are older and there's so much of a legacy against the reality, when they say, when the legacy is pushed against the reality, then push the legacy. So he has a daughter, hopefully that he acknowledged, and that was in 2001. So did people really come back to him, knowing that this is a person you grew up with, looking at as a role model, as a hero, and he does that? Well, let me continue. July 2009, he apologizes for remarks he made on July 6th about presidential candidate Barack Obama while on a break during an interview. He later apologized. So when the mic is off, as far as television, you say something. Are you apologizing because you got caught with anything? Or are you really apologizing? So September 2012, 2 Americans serving prison sentences for treason in Gambia are allowed to return to the United States after Jackson makes a face-to-face appeal. to President Yamin for their release. Wow. He didn't just push again for civil rights for African Americans, he did it across the whole world. And none of these, again, did he do with the privilege of the United States helping him out. August 2013, Jackson's son, Jesse Jackson, is sentenced to 30 months in prison for misusing roughly $750,000 in campaign funds over several years. You can't control your children after a certain time. But is this why we have this thing with politicians, whether they're even having affairs or doing something legal with money? I don't know. You can't say until you're in their shoes, but when you have faith in people, I guess as humans, we put 100% in faith that they're perfect. But remember, there's only one substance or person that is or was faithful, and that was Jesus. October 2013, following public pleas from Jackson, Colombia's guerrillas released Kevin Scott Tupac. Wow, while he was backpacking through Colombia. Again, Jesse Jackson, doing his own little thing, releasing people, making statements, doing it on his own. August 2014, writes an op-ed article for USA Today called "There's a Ferguson Near You," talking about the death of Michael Brown. Sadly, November 2017, he announces he has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. July 12, 2019, puts together a letter to President Donald Trump urging him to grant a full pardon of Governor Rob Blagojevich. And man, that governor, he got caught in a scandal where he wanted to get something from Obama. You're going to have to look at it when Obama was running and found out he was doing some other illegal things. He went to jail. And Jesse Jackson tried to get a pardon. And in the end, Donald Trump did give him a pardon. And that was 2020 that Trump gave him the PAMA or the pardon. So 2020, he endorsed, which was interesting, Bernie Sanders to become the presidential nomination. 21, it releases a statement in February that he's recovering from surgery after he was being hospitalized for discomfort. And 21 of August, Jackson and his wife both had COVID. September 21, he's discharged from the facility. And November of 21, he's discharged from the hospital after falling and hitting his head while attending a meeting at Howard University. Though test results were negative, he still was hospitalized. So wow, that's Jesse Jackson. And let's go back a little bit. Jesse Jackson right here with Dr. King. And this is the day before Dr. King was assassinated. And an interesting thing about this picture, the day after King got shot, Jesse Jackson was on the Today Show and supposedly had a shirt that had Dr. King's blood on it. And it was found out with people that they don't want to talk about this. I could not find a picture that it was a lie. And this wasn't the blood of Dr. King on the shirt. And he took a little fallout, but as I went online and tried to find a picture of that story, I even found a picture of Dr. King in his casket, which was sad. But I could not find a picture anywhere of Jesse Jackson with the shirt of the blood of Dr. King on it. Jesse Jackson right here, doing his speech, doing what he does best. In the last days of him being the president of the PUSH organization. This is how I remember Dr. King. I mean, not Dr. King, Jesse Jackson. This is how I remember him in his prime, going out there, getting people released, running for president. This is the picture of 1998 or 1988 when he ran for president of the United States. Man, where are our leaders at now? And this one, hopefully people will remember this, because this is the man, again, at 81 who just stepped down, pretty much being the head of the Push organization and doing things that people have loved for years and have supported. And you pray that this leader that's coming up, if he could do half the justice that Dr. Jackson has done and Reverend Jackson has done, then we're in for some great decades. We pray that Reverend Jackson will be around to still give his voice and make a difference. That's my tribute. Not saying anything's wrong with Jesse, but he just decided to give up what he's doing full time to enjoy parts of his life, which we have to do. We're keeping it honest, we're keeping it real, and we're keeping it simple. Yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. If you have any questions or comments, you can email yours truly. It's parkerman2011@gmail.com, parkerman2011@gmail.com. And you can also text me. Telephone number is 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. We have this thing that we do, and we have a lot of papers out here, so as we sort through these while we're talking. We have this thing that we do, and we'll give you a motivational saying, something to keep you going. What would you do? And it's also the question of the day, the hardest question of the day. I want you to think about this. What would you do if fear wasn't an issue and you couldn't fail? What would you do if fear wasn't an issue and you couldn't fail? Would that make you more bold in the choices that you would do? Would that make you say, wow, you know what? I want to go skydiving. Never done it? I want to run for president. Never done it? What one thing would you do that maybe you've been afraid to do, but now you have the ability to do it? One of my things for years was being on an elevator. Hated elevators, okay? Some people hate snakes. Some people are scared of clowns. What if you had a chance and you're scared of clowns to go to the circus and meet a clown? Well, my thing was scared of elevators. To this day, I still am. But it's something I kind of been working through. I know it's silly, but let me know, what are some of the things that you're scared of? What would you do if fear wasn't an issue and you couldn't fail? Let me know what that is. How many people are scared of snakes? Boas? Because I don't think they bite you, I think they squeeze you. But what things are you scared of? Would you do it? Would you take that chance? Well, here's somebody that's not scared. It seems like of anything, going to jail, paying fines. At his age, which is good, it shows age ain't nothing but a number. He's almost 80. But boy, you think he's, man, in his 50s or whatever. He has this vibrant energy where it's like, wow, he tries to reel you in and you're thinking maybe he's one of us, one of you, and then some people he bites. So it's interesting. I was watching this rally, Donald Trump, and his recent rallies have been kind of crazy. So at the rally, he does this thing called the snake poem. And I have never heard it. I've followed him for a few years. And I guess this has been a poem he's been using since 2016. Some people are saying that he's using it as far as for the issue of immigration and why immigrants shouldn't be allowed here as far as crossing the border. But I only heard this not too long ago, the snake poem. And it goes something like this. Down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor half-frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Oh, well, she cried. I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman. Signed, the snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. Now that she hurried home from work that night, as soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, signed the snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. But if I hadn't brought you in by now, you might have died. Now she stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thanks, that snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, signed the snake. I saved you, cried that woman, and you bit me. Even why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew darn well I was a snake before you took me in. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, signed the snake. Wow. And I only heard this poem not too long ago. So here's the backstory of this poem. So the snake, the song, was written and first recorded by civil rights activist Oscar Brown in 1963. Ironically, a civil rights activist. It became a hit single for Al Wilson in 1968, and it's been used by Donald Trump since 2016. So he reads his lyrics at several campaign rallies, and I've never seen this lyric or seen him do it. I've seen some rallies. And this is used to illustrate his position on illegal immigration, claiming that the decision to allow people claiming refuge to enter the United States would come back to bite us. Wow. So as you listen to that song, you let me know what you thought about that. I said, you look at that picture. So it's been characterized as a celebration of Black culture and a representation of racism. That's what the song has really been about. And suggestions have been made that the snake in the song refers to a white person. So go back, listen to what I just said, or look up the snake. So two of Brown's 7 children, Brown is one that wrote the song. They have told Donald Trump to stop using our song at your rallies. And that Brown, the writer of the song, had nothing against immigrants. So despite a court case and a dissent letter, and if you know Trump, cease and desist, going to court, he's Teflon Don. He's continued reciting the lyrics to this day. Just doesn't care. But that's the history of the snake song. Very interesting. Speaking of interesting, you're watching Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker. We keep it simple. You know what? We keep it honest and we keep it real. And I think I told you guys before, it was originally called Keep It Simple or Keeping It Simple. And as I was putting the show together, because I say, I'm just keeping it real. That was my first title of the show, Keeping It Real, because I say it. And then because when people are talking, they're like, you know what? I'm just keeping it real. And then they go up their story. So again, I was on AI trying to think of a title. And some of the titles came up. The Genuine Voice of Anthony Parker, Keeping It Genuine with Anthony Parker, True to the Core with Anthony Parker, Authentic Conversations with Anthony Parker, and many others. So I just decided to use Keeping It Honest with Anthony Parker. And you can type it, Keeping It Honest with Anthony Parker. Pick up some of the videos that we've done. We have long form, short form. We do different topics. We do stories that you may not have heard about. And if we do them, we do it with Parker Twist, such as this one coming up. Everybody's been talking about this story. We're going to talk about it, but we're going to give our twist to it. right after this story. So we all know this lady, Callie Russell. Man, everybody across the country knows this story. The police know the story. And think of what I'm saying and what's not being said. So police say they cannot verify most of the information from Miss Callie Russell's story, who was missing, of course. So they shared new details about this lady who was missing for 49 hours. You know, she reported a kid walking alone on the side of the highway, telling investigators that there was a kid, and did this with a 911. So they said they haven't been able to verify most of her initial story yet. And as we're all wondering. So at a news conference, the police chief, Derson, he said the investigation continued, but he believed there's not a threat to the community. No one's reported a missing child, he said. But Russell's mother on the Today Show, she has said that she believes her daughter was abducted before she returned home. She's given detectives her statement, and hopefully they are pursuing her abductor. So the police chief told reporters that investigators have learned that she took items from work, she stopped at a restaurant to get food, and she bought snacks. He also spoke about web searches on her cell phone in the lead up to her disappearance. And the thing is that right now, nobody has found any of this to be true. So again, we know she was driving to her home about 10 miles to the north when she called 911 to say she was stopping her car because there was a child. And she was on the phone talking to a family member, and first she called 911, and then she called a family member to let them know there's a baby on the highway, and it's in pitch black. So she spoke once to investigators after being found, and she hasn't spoken to anybody else. So she claimed that a man came up and picked her up, and she screamed. The next thing that she remembers is being in a trailer of an 18-wheeler. She stated that the male was with a female. However, she never saw the female, only heard her voice. And she also said that she could hear a baby crying. So she said that the abductor had orange hair with a bald spot. And she told him at one point that she was able to escape the 18-wheeler, but was caught again and put into a car. So she eventually made it to the house and got undressed and talked to her mom and everything. But while she was also abducted, she was undressed there. She believes they took pictures of her, but does not remember them having any physical or sexual contact. She woke up that next day, still there, and the woman fed her cheese crackers and played with her hair. So the way that she escaped is still unknown, but she said she ran through the woods before coming near her home. She came home around 10:45 Saturday on foot, was taken to the hospital, and the detectives say they want to speak to her again. Her parents appeared on the Today Show, and they said she definitely fought for her life. There were moments when she physically had to fight for her life, and there were moments when she had to mentally fight for her life. So the police, they checked her cell phone and her watch, and it was Apple Watch. And what was left in the car was, and this is interesting, what was left in the car was her watch, her purse, her wig. So the cops and nobody could pinpoint her where she was at. The phone was left because if they had her phone, she had it with her, they would have been able to pinpoint her. Also, the cheese crackers, they were gone. The food that she had bought, they were gone. Because she had stopped and got some food. And at her job that she had worked at, a bathrobe was taken, a roll of toilet paper, and other items belonging to the business. So I understand that she took it. She also got some food. So they didn't find any food at the house. So questions are, Carla, that food you got, was it for the person that you were going to see supposedly? We don't know. You had cheese and crackers. You said that they were feeding you cheese and crackers. You were gone for a couple of days. What did you dude for those couple of days. When you came back, did you say anything about this toddler that was on the highway? As we all looked at the picture of the cars on the highway, it was dark. And they were saying, you were driving for a while. They said you were driving for 600 yards, which is about, they said, I think about 3 football lengths as you were making that call to see about 911 getting in contact with them, letting them know there was a toddler on the highway. Nobody else reported a toddler on the highway. There was no, Amber Alert report on a toddler. The police didn't say, hey, you know what? We have somebody on loose that is kidnapping people. So be on the lookout. The police didn't say that. Nobody reported anybody else being found on that highway. But on your computer, your work computer, there was information, I guess you had typed in, looking up Amber Alerts, including one about the maximum age, if you have to pay for that. Looking up the movie Taken, and if it's anything about abduction, then why were you looking this up? And then the next minute you're abducted. Wow. So it has me thinking too about the things that were taken, no pun intended, from that store. If any of this has been collaborated as not being true and a hoax, then who's going to pay for this? Because you had the whole country caring about you. I was even really involved in this too, because I'm thinking, wow, what comments do I make until I'm sure that this is true or not true? And at the end of the day, no matter what, it's kind of funny. Everybody was worried about her. And now that she's found, everybody is vilifying her. Now can we talk if she had a possible mental illness breakdown? And I guess at the end of the day, we would rather her say that she had a mental health breakdown. There's no history supposedly of that. Then we finding out that it was a lie. She went to see her boyfriend. But at the end of the day, we're glad that she is okay. But the question is, one, where is that baby at? And what happened to you? And if this is a hoax, then why would anybody else believe in your story? Will we ever find the truth of this? I don't know. Chances are, will we ever find who had cocaine in the White House? Then before we'll find the truth of what happened with Callie Russell. The good thing, thank goodness she's home, but we all want to know, well, what happened? What really happened? Is this going to be a Dateline episode of the show? What happened to Callie Russell? Well, thank goodness she's not dead. And we look at this, some people are saying, well, you know what, this is a bad avenue as far as African Americans, because we put it out there and Black women are doing some of this stuff. And so the media, some of the people who are hosting shows are putting a narrative out there where we're never going to trust anybody who's kidnapped again, because we really don't know if that person is kidnapped. And we have to look at this, even though the police didn't say this. Well, what are the intangibles if this is all a hoax? Does she go to jail? Is she being charged for something? What happens for all the manhunt, all the hours? What happens as far as what you put the country into, thinking that you were kidnapped? So some people are thinking, she may even say, aliens came and picked her up or whatever. But the police are not saying, check it out, it's what they're not saying. We have an Amber Alert for this missing baby, this mysteriously missing baby. Be on the lookout for somebody kidnapping women. And we're looking for the potential abductor, because there's also people that live in that neighborhood who are scared because they don't know the full story. So police, you're saying a lot by not saying a lot. What we're doing, keeping it simple, keeping it honest, and keeping it real. So as we're talking about stories about people possibly making a hoax, And maybe the Callie story is real, maybe it's not. Let me know. Text me 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. You can do this on the live show or the replay. Hit subscribe and like and let me know how you feel. I am just totally just amazed at, and what I'm doing now is I'm working my own board too. So excuse me 1 second. I'm working my own board and I'm letting you guys know that this is a story that I really don't think that we're going to get all the answers to. What do you think? Do you think we'll get the answers to the story? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because there's just too many things just happening with this story. Right here. Okay. This is an interesting one. Sherry Papini. As we're talking about this, Sherry Papini, hoax, kidnapping. But let's go back. This is not too long ago, too. Okay? The Vanishing Act, how Sherry Papini was found. It was a shocking abduction of a mother of 2 small children. This rocked this world in Northern California and the nation. So Sherry Papini turned up on the side of a highway 3 weeks, listen to this, after her mysterious disappearance. In the end, Sherry Papini herself masterminded her own disappearance. She said she was missing for 3, and you listen to this, 3 weeks, not just 3 days, but 3 weeks. She said during this hearing, when she got caught, what was done cannot be undone. So now from the start, police suspected that something was off. Now let me tell you the story. She was a 34-year-old mother of 2. She went missing in November 2016 while out for a jog in her Redding neighborhood. So a massive search was out there being looked at by community family members and her husband. He was pitching in to find the missing mom. So at the time, he pleaded with the police for help, as most people do, when somebody's missing. On November 2016, Thanksgiving Day, she was found on a highway about 146 miles away from where she lives. Injuries covering her body, including a Bible verse branded on her shoulder. The bruises were just intense, the husband told ABC. She always had very long blonde hair, and they chopped it off. So recorded police interviews with her in the hours after her return showed that she was reluctant to speak with investigators, claiming that her abductors told her that she was going to be trafficked to someone in law enforcement. 2 women. There was an older one and a younger one, she said. They were Hispanic and they spoke Spanish a lot. Wow. So that's her and the police talking to us. And this is her right here. So given that she didn't want to speak, they asked her husband to sit down with her during one interview and asked her questions about what happened. They later returned for a second interview, but Sherry remained reluctant to open up to them. The reason they asked her husband was because she was more comfortable talking in front of him. She said, I don't know you guys. I don't know if you're in my corner. I know my husband. I know my husband's in my corner, she said. So she claimed that 2 Latino women abducted her at gunpoint and took her in an SUV to a location where she just was quiet. So a couple people from the Latino community said they were fearful that she might draw a sketch, intimidating people in the community to be fearful of Latino women. Wow. So while she was talking to police, she kept giving different versions. And so Papino's clothing was tested. And this is where it comes in. They found out that it was belonging to a male, but when the DNA was searched in a criminal database, nothing was found. So while searching her phone records, they were also able to determine that in the days prior to her abduction, she was in touch with several men because she has a lot of friends. The police said this is how the case was changed. When things got hard, she would just run away. There were some infidelity issues in her background that even Keith, her husband, had told us about, said the police chief. So they made little progress in the case until 2020, with the help of a genetic genealogist. DNA was finally matched to James Ray's, an ex-boyfriend of Sherry. So when the police questioned him, he initially said that he hadn't spoken to her, but he eventually revealed that she had asked him for help. She was trying to get away from her husband, he said, unaware that Sherry's allegations against Keith were unfounded because she said that she was fearful of her husband. So Ray's added that he didn't know anything about the two Hispanic women. He revealed that she suggested he rent a car and pick her up. So he was involved in this. They traveled 9 hours south to Costa Mesa, where she stayed in an apartment with him for weeks. She also revealed that the bruises and the burns in her body were largely self-inflicted, and that she also asked her ex-boyfriend to hurt her. He recounted to investigators. So he said, I'm like, okay, this is probably going to hurt. I mean, I've never done this. But he said things changed on Thanksgiving when she wanted to leave and come home because she missed her children. And now that investigators were aware of this, they called Sherry and her husband for questioning. So in August 2020, they questioned her again and told her that they had matched the DNA to her ex-boyfriend. They also told her that Ray's had told the police everything that he knew. And the local people in the community that had known her, they had supported her. When they found out about this, they said it was kind of a slap in the face. It just kind of makes a mockery out of anyone who's really lost a person. So a representative from the Latino community said, there are no dangerous, masked, gun-toting Hispanic Latino women out here wanting to abduct your children, especially if they're white. So she went to jail for her sentencing. She said, my current focus is on moving on and doing everything that I can to provide my two children with a healthy, normal, and happy life. And as the judge ordered her to pay 100, and not just 100, but $309,000 in restitution, and even questioned if she would be able to pay that money. So the judge is telling her to pay over $300,000. He said, I would ask, who's going to employ her in the future? Asked the judge during the sentencing hearing. So there's a lady who went to jail for almost a year and a half. There we go. Her right here being questioned by police. The whole world again was looking for her. Not just 3 days, but just 3 weeks. So she really, really, really made up everything. And then she is right here, right there. Wow. 18 months in prison. Federal prison to be exact. So she did that. So you wonder what's going to happen with Callie. Is she going to go to jail too? She went down that road, but only 3 days. So it's not just a black thing, black and white thing. It's anybody that can make up a story that can get away with it. Some people do, some people don't. Some of it is real. But don't let it hurt when people are really kidnapped. Don't let these stories just hold you back in believing that maybe they are kidnapped. But especially get evidence. Keep it simple, keep it honest, and let's keep it real. And as we're talking about people and hoaxes, because those, that one right there was a hoax. Let's go back to one that people still kind of think, well, you know what? This might have really happened. Some people believe that it really happened. Some people believe that it didn't. Let's go back all the way to Tawana Brawley, right there. Don't know if you remember this person, know him now, as a Reverend Al Sharpton back then. So let me give you the backstory on this case. Now, this story, some people was a hoax, but I'm going to let you know the impact of what happened with this story. So if you know, this is Tawana Brown and Jesse Jackson, and this was taken in 1988. So, sorry, 1987, 15-year-old Tawana Brown right there. So on November 28th, 90 or 87, she was found in a trash bag after having been missing for 4 days from her home. She had racial slurs written on her body and was covered in feces. Brawley accused 4 white men of having raped her. So the charges received widespread attention, in part because of the appalling condition in which she had been left, her young age, and the professional status of the people that she accused of the crime. So she included police officers and a prosecuting attorney. So Brawley's advisors, there were 4 of them, including Al Sharpton. He helped in bringing the case to national prominence. After hearing evidence, a grand jury concluded in October 88 that Brawley had not been a victim of a forcible sexual assault and that she herself may have created the appearance of such an attack. So Stephen Baganis, the New York prosecutor whom Brawley had accused of being one of her assailants, later successfully sued Brawley and her 3 advisors, including Sharpton, for defamation. So that's how part of it ended. But let me still give you the impact of the story. So she received considerable support from the African American community. Some academics have suggested that she was victimized by biased reporting that had credited racial stereotypes. Even back then, the mainstream media, the coverage drew heated criticism from African American press and from many Black leaders who professed to believe the teenager and her narrative. Wow. The grand jury's conclusion decreased support for Brawley and her advisors, so her family have continued to this day to assert that the allegations were true. So, again, she had been missing for 4 days. She was found seamlessly unconscious and unresponsive, lying in a garbage bag several feet from an apartment where she had once lived. Her clothing was torn and burned, her body smeared with feces. She was taken to the emergency room where the words KKK, the N word, and the B word were discovered written on her torso with charcoal. Wow. So a detective from the Sheriff's Juvenile Aid Department, among others, was summoned to interview Brawley, but she remained unresponsive. She didn't want to interview with anybody. The family requested a Black officer, which the police department was able to provide. She described an extremely spacey look on her face when she saw Brawley, but she communicated with this officer with nods of the head, shrugs of the shoulder, and written notes. The interview lasted 20 minutes, during which she uttered only one word, neon. Though gestures and writing, however, she indicated she had been raped repeatedly in a wooded area by 6 white men, at least one of whom she said was a police officer. So she's putting this out there back then in 1988. So a sex assault kit was administered and police began building a case. She provided no names or descriptions of her assailants. She later told others that there had been no rape, only other kinds of sexual abuse. Forensic tests found no evidence that a sexual assault of any kind had occurred. There was no evidence of exposure to elements which would have been expected to a victim held for several days in the woods at a time when the temperature dropped below freezing every night. So, as we're taking in this story, there was no internet back then. It was just literally ABC, CBS, and NBC, the 3 main networks. So the initial public response to her story was mostly sympathetic. We felt sorry for this because back then we didn't have the technology that we did now. Bill Cosby offered a $25,000 reward for information on the case, while Don King offered $100,000 toward her education. In December 87, more than 1,000 people, including Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, marched through the streets of New York in support of Brawley. So her claims in the case captured headlines across the country. And back then it also did the world. When civil rights activists Al Sharpton and others began handling her case, the case quickly became highly controversial. Some people suggested that the Ku Klux Klan, the Irish Republican Army, and the Mafia had conspired with the United States government in this alleged cover-up. So Henry Crisp, a police officer who committed suicide shortly after the period where Brawley was allegedly held captive, he became a suspect in this case. Stephen Paganis, an assistant district attorney, attempted to establish an alibi for Crisp, stating that he had been with Crisp during that period of time. Sharpton, Maddox, and a couple others then said that Crisp and Paganis were two of the rapists. Wow. They were two of the rapists. So they attempted to get an alibi for Crisp. And based on a suicide note, reported that he killed himself because his girlfriend ended the relationship shortly before his death. And because he was upset that he was unable to become a state trooper. So the mainstream media, they drew heated criticism because all they wanted to do was find out who committed this. Who committed this crime? So right now we're giving you part one of the show. We're going to come back with part two and tell you what happened. So stay tuned. Hold your breath. Part two of what happened to Tawana Brawley. And we're going to continue with our Keeping It Honest show. Remember, we keep it simple, we keep it honest, and we keep it real. Stay tuned for the show. We're going to tell you a little bit more about what happened and everything else that involved. We're going to continue with the Tupac case, tell you about that, the Miranda rights, and talk about upcoming things on the show. If you have any questions or comments, email me, parkerman2011@gmail.com, parkerman2011@gmail.com, and also give me a call, text 216-702-3718, 216-702-3718. Remember, keep your head up, never look down, always believe in yourself, and therein will lie your answer. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for part two of Keeping It Honest with yours truly, Anthony Parker Alexander. God bless.